Call the December 9th Plan Commission meeting order. Mr. Planning Manager, please call the roll.
Mayor Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Burkhardt? Here. Commissioner Haley?
Here.
City Engineer Morrow?
Here.
Alderwoman Hanneman?
Here.
Commissioner Leon?
Here.
We have a quorum. Please rise and join the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those of you new to a city meeting, usually we have citizens comment period, but that is only for Plan Commission, or that's only for Common Council. Plan Commission does not have citizen comment period because we hold public hearings. Public hearings are held on specific items. We have 2 of them this evening, so we won't take general citizen comment. Just so you know, it's because we do public hearings. With that, we move on to item B, approval of the regular meeting minutes of November 18th. Any additions or corrections?
Second.
Moved by Leon, seconded by Burkhardt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Because we have 2 business items that are short, we're going to go do those first without objection. First item is a temporary use for Zerbonic Escamilla food truck. Mr. Planning Manager, Mr. Martinez.
Good evening. Regulo Martinez of the City Development Department. This is an application temporary use for a food truck on a private property on a parking lot. Generally, food trucks may be approved by staff if it's less than 30 days, but this is for 1 year from May 2022 from May 2023. Staff is recommending approval of the location and the period of time, subject to the applicant to obtain the separate approvals required through the health department for food and beverage.
Questions for the commission, from the commission? Alderwoman Hanneman.
I move to adopt a resolution imposing conditions and restrictions for the approval of a temporary use for Tony's Taco Truck / Tony's Food Truck operation in a parking lot located at 3030 West Ryan Road.
Second.
Seconded by Leon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D2 is Franklin High School turf installation. It's before us as a site plan amendment. Mr. Martinez.
Yes, this application is for replacement of grass for synthetic turf. So you can see, we can see the project location here. One of the concerns that staff had previously was that it was not clear if the new turf will impact a conservation easement that was previously recorded, but the applicant provided additional information and that issue has been resolved. So staff is recommending approval with one condition that the applicant shall install during construction a temporary fencing that will show the contractors to not encroach into the conservation easement.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Leon.
Not a question, just a comment. Staff, just want to thank you for working with the applicant to resolve the issues to get this done in a timely manner. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, I will move to adopt a resolution amending the site plan for property located at 8222 South 51st Street to allow for installation of synthetic turf and related drainage to replace the existing grass varsity baseball and softball fields at the Franklin High School site. Tax key number 807-9999-001, including the condition that the applicant shall install temporary fencing to indicate the easement area during construction.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Leon. All those questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move back to the regular order of business. Item C1, Cape Crossing Development. This is creation of a new single-family residence subdivision as a planned development district. Mr. Ray.
City of Franklin Plan Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 9, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Common Council Chambers of Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin 53132 to take public comments. regarding an application by Newman Developments Incorporated requesting approval of a rezoning for a planned development district number 40 known as Cape Crossing to be located at 12200 West Ryan Road, tax key numbers 890-9991-001 and 890-9991-002, approximately 84 acres in area, which is currently zoned R3 Suburban Estate Single-Family Residence District. The proposed planned development district would be established to create a new single-family residential subdivision, which includes a total of 142 lots with private neighborhood amenities such as a pool, playground, and fire pit, and access to a proposed interurban trail. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the requirements of Section 62.23, Paragraph 7B of the Wisconsin statutes, and Sections 15-9.0205 and 15-9.0208 of the City of Franklin Unified Development Ordinance. A map showing the property affected, full legal description of the application, and all supporting materials are available for review and may be obtained from the city clerk by way of request to the Department of City Development at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin, 53132 during normal business hours. A copy of the proposed planned development district ordinance in draft form is available and open for inspection by the public in the office of the city clerk at Franklin City Hall, same address, during normal business hours. The public is invited to attend the public hearing and to provide input.
We have a properly noticed public hearing. Mr. Martinez, you're doing the recap?
Yep.
Plain English on what the development is all about?
General location, this is the project site, 84 acres. It is located next to the city limits. So this area is the city of Muskego, basically single-family residential and a golf course on this side. To the north, this is property owned by Wisconsin DNR. There's floodplain also, but outside the project site. These properties also floodplain and natural resources is owned by the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. This is the We Energies right-of-way that could be the future 116th Street Trail. And this is vacant property, some multifamily. Even though this site is close to the Area G and the TIC 6, it's outside these areas. So this is the proposed plan. This was presented previously before the Common Council in August for a concept review. The major changes include that the number of units was decreased from 180 to the current design that is 142 units.
1 second.
Mhm.
This area here is the western boundary. This is Muskego. Here's Ryan Road. Here's the WEPCO easement. This is the east side, and this is the north. Just so you get your orientation. Thanks for.
Right. Yeah. Good note. Yeah, the map has been rotated. So this proposed plan development district has two areas. So the villas and the estates. The difference is that the lots here in the villas are smaller. I will get into more detail about that later in the application, in the presentation. There's a single access. This single access is more than the required typical minor street. So it is a 80-foot right-of-way, and we require 60 for a typical minor street. So it's wider than the typical street. The development is not expected to encroach into any projected natural resources like this wetlands here and here. It may be some overlapping or of some lots, but no structures will encroach into the protected resources like the wetland setback. I would like to note also that there is a fuel line running from south to north here, and there is also overhead power lines in this area. The applicant is also proposing an emergency access and trail connection to the future trail that will be along this line here. And also the proposed development includes sidewalks, internal sidewalks on both sides of the streets. So why the applicant is requesting a planned development district, the short answer is because the proposed lots are too small for the current UDO standards. This is the villas and the estates. So we did an analysis of the lot with respect to the current zoning. So basically, it's 9,000 square feet, the proposed lot size for the villas, the minimum lot size. And the conventional R3, that is the base zoning, the minimum is 20,000 square feet. So this is the smallest lot in the entire subdivision, lot 59. So if we take all the setbacks and the lot coverage, that is 30%. So the buildable area, it's 2,700 square feet. So that could accommodate the standard, the dwelling unit that they're proposing. So, and it will have additional space for the pool, the shed, etc., any other accessory structure. And another important point that even if the lots are smaller, the overall density will not be higher than the normal density that is allowed in the base zoning district. So if we take the density of this zoning district, it may allow up to 144 lots, and they are proposing 142 lots. So lots are smaller, but the density will be maintained. This is because we can see that areas that are for stormwater basins or protecting natural resources. With regards to the land use, residential single family is consistent with the comp plan. There's a picture of the comp plan. So the yellow is for residential. So the land use is consistent. With regards to the egress and egress, so during the review, we recommended the applicant to shift the location of the access because of some street grade change that may impact the visibility. So they addressed this comment and shift the access further to the west. So this is the previous design. So now the access is located right here to address that comment. However, staff is still recommending, city development staff is still recommending a second access point. The fire department and the police department are okay with the single access. This is a recommendation of the city development staff. Only if this wetland here is exempt from state and federal regulations. That may allow a possible second location access point here. If that wetland is protected, so that condition or that recommendation will not make any sense. Go to the finally. Well, this is a detail of the single access. So it will be 24 lane to 24 lanes. So with the recommended conditions by staff is the second access point, as I pointed out before. Add landscape screening in this area if it's approved by the engineering department, because the applicant is proposing a drainage easement here. So if it's okay for the engineering department, we recommend additional landscape screening here in this area. Okay. The other condition is that they will need to obtain approval from the easement holder of the West Shore pipeline. There is a fuel line that is running here for any grading activities that may impact this easement. And the last condition is that they need to make this easement, this is another landscape easement here, wider, but the applicant explained that this outlet will also account for landscape easement. So for landscape screening, sorry. So that condition number 4 may be removed. Staff have no objection to remove condition number 4. So staff recommend approval. Staff does not recommend approval of the project as presented, but we recommend approval with the conditions that are included in the ordinance, in the draft ordinance.
Staff did not recommend approval based on the original submittal. and maintains the recommendation for not approving, but the applicant has addressed most of those concerns, and you're still maintaining that you do not recommend approval?
So I will say this.
So let me run through them.
All right.
Okay? So one of your objections was you wanted a second access point, right?
Correct.
So so in your recommendation, this is okay if this is exempt,
Correct. Yeah.
okay?
Correct.
And is this accounted for in your recommendation
No.
as a second access point?
Well, even if this is provided, we still recommend the second access. I mean, as a street, not only as an emergency access.
Okay. I need to be clear about this because people are making their own personal judgments based on what we wrote in a recommendation that may mean something different than the Plan Commission. Okay. The staff has no issue with the design of the development, correct? No issue with
No.
the density?
No.
The easement here is an issue for staff because you want to, of course, protect the drainage way and the buffer to Muskego. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And the applicant offered us solutions to that. Similarly here.
Correct.
So, okay. I think I've said enough. Commissioner Leone, push your button.
As if you could just please clarify, I think the condition 1 states in the second sentence, the applicant should include a second access point to Ryan Road. And I think that second one is not, unless I'm looking at it wrong.
Correct.
Right, but to answer your question, I think, Mr. Mayor, staff is saying in that first condition that they're recommending a condition of a road, second access point to Ryan Road, and that doesn't cover it, correct?
That is not a street connection to Ryan
Okay.
Road. Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, we have a properly noticed public hearing. It's been described and discussed a little bit. So I will open the public hearing on this matter. Anyone wishing to speak, please rise, come forward, and give us your name and address. So just to let you know how this works, you should contain your comments to this development and talk about the issues that you have with this development, whether it's positive or negative, and give us your name and address. That's it. Commission, want time limit? Okay. Yes, sir. Good evening.
My name is Frank.
It's on. You may not hear it, though.
Right now.
Well, I'll talk louder. How's that?
It's fine.
It's on.
My name is Frank Janaszewski. I live at 12301 West Ryan Road. That is not vacant property as you described it to be, zoned multifamily. I lived there for the last 20 years.
Sorry, it's not multifamily. Sorry.
Yeah. I have several concerns on Ryan Road right now. The condition of Ryan Road virtually has no shoulder. So when people are on there, either taking their dogs for a walk or even biking down there, it's chaos with the amount of traffic that there's now. Adding 142 additional home sites is going to massively increase the traffic. There's only a dozen homes on that road right now, and you've got one single access point, and that's in and out on Ryan Road. Be a big concern of mine. Secondly, there's no water available there. Am I right? There's sewer, but no water. Is
That's
that
true.
correct? So every one of those is going to have to drill a well?
The developer will bring the water.
Pardon?
The developer will bring the water.
From where?
Loomis and Ryan.
They're going to run water down Ryan Road? Okay, that wasn't in anything that I saw. The size of it and the road condition of Ryan, like I said, with virtually no shoulder, and I've lived there 20 years walking up down that road, seeing people on bicycles, and if there's cars coming both directions, good luck. It's going to be nuts. Let alone if anybody tries to take a baby stroller down there. One point of interest is recently, I think 9 or 10 years ago, you put sewer in down Ryan Road. We've had odor abatement problems from day one. There's been systems installed to address the odor problems. I literally had Wisconsin Gas out last winter because I thought I had a gas leak, and it was sewer. That's how strong it was. They were ready to dig up my whole yard because they thought there was a gas leak, and it was sewer odor. So adding a lot of additional sewer requirements is a big concern. On a very light note, that current piece of property on the west and south boundaries is a snowmobile trail that's been there for at least 20 years. Where or how those access to that property, I have no idea. I'm just telling you there's been posted snowmobile trails on the west and south part of that property. So those are my concerns.
Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi, my name's Bill Donahue. I live at W124S9510 Weatherwood Circle in Muskego. Been there since 2007, so I've seen a lot of things go along Ryan Road. I have to agree that there's a lot of issues with the road as far as traffic today, and that's without hardly any houses on it, because it's a popular cut through. People don't like to get on 108th or Highway 100. They like to come straight down Ryan, cut up through into Muskego, and there's a bunch of development that's gone on there. So the traffic is going to be quite an issue, I think. And I look at this property and I say, well, I think it's way too high a density. And it's only because of one point. There's only one road to come out to. Had they wanted to have something this big, there should have been a plan for a road in the back, another exit point to another street so that we could split the traffic. And the other thing, I know I'm not supposed to talk about something else, but there's another development of 42 townhomes, I think it is 42. There's also going to come out to Ryan Road. Been restricted from 36. So this little piece of Ryan Road is going to be crazy compared to what it is today. And a lot of the traffic today isn't from the houses on it. It's from people passing from other places. So that's 180 some additional people that are going to be on Ryan Road. The other thing, as far as the sewage, yeah, that's been a big problem. And hopefully that's been taken care of, but that's been ongoing. See, I have some other notes too. Oh, as far as drainage goes from those subdivisions, I'm in one of the subdivisions that drains through this property. I don't know how that's going to be dealt with during construction, but that's kind of concern. I know that there's another subdivision across the street from me that's got the same issues, and there's a lot of drainage through there. And the snowmobile path, yeah, it grows right along that border that you're talking about, comes down through and across there and down along Ryan Road. So that's going to be cut off as well. Anyhow, I think it's an interesting design. I just think it's a matter of, it's landlocked. If there'd been a plan in place to put proper roadways in before things were developed, then it would have been okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Hi.
Excuse me. I encourage everybody not to wait for the next person.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Karen Zalecki. I live at 11736 West Ryan Road. My main concern is exactly what they both said. I am one of the people that walk my dog. I also have children that has multiple children that live on this road, and it's definitely getting very dangerous to have them go and play with their friends. We have a bus on those roads. I've actually asked for police presence because of my children being on Loomis Road and traffic not stopping for them while they're getting on the bus, it's going to get worse if you dense this more. Again, the property design, and definitely, it's not a good design. I don't agree.
Thank you very much.
Safety should be number one.
Former Alderman Mayor.
Suzanne Mayer on 9733 West Ryan Road. Not to reiterate everything everybody said, but I have to reiterate what everybody said. The Ryan Road can be absolutely crazy, and you can't look at this project as just an island. Oh, we can only look at this. There's a lot of stuff going on in that area of Franklin right now. This is not the only thing. You have to take into consideration everything that's going to be going on there. So Ryan Road is, I'd say at this point, a relatively dangerous road. On a normal day, and you add in all of this, plus everything else that's going on in that area, and you could be in trouble. The one thing that I do want to have addressed is the fact that you said the developer is going to be paying for water to come down. If you could just give everybody information as to what that entails and how it concerns the residents on that road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Ms. DeSimone.
Hi, I'm Jean DeSimone Seeger, and I live at 9651 South 31st Street. And when I first heard about this, it was in the paper, and I thought, oh no, this is not a good idea. Now somebody else is going to be speaking in a moment, and what she has to say, I think, is the most important thing. But right now, I'll just say, while I agree with the reasons that will be presented by others not to develop this area, please consider also that this development would be very close to the Franklin dump. I question living near the landfill, concerned that it may cause health problems. Years ago, a person who was living near that mountain known as the dump collected articles about the many neighbors nearby, living near the mountain, who had developed cancer. And there was a concern that there was a link. It wasn't proven, but he was, really concerned about this. And I recall a recommendation a while ago on National Public Radio that people live no closer than 9 miles from a dump. I realize the water is going to be piped in, but that still is disturbing. That I'm concerned about all of it. When Oak Creek allowed a housing development to be built near the power plant, it caused many problems. And there were issues after building near the Franklin Quarry. Living too near toxic or explosive areas is not a good idea. Most importantly, land is disappearing. That is, for me, the most important thing. And turning into fast development without concern for what future generations or plant communities or animal communities will need. We're just thinking of ourselves. We need to take consideration that we live alongside these other communities and ages, not just this age. Our developments are mechanistic. We move earth and water as we deem convenient. I long for Franklin that leads in ecological preservation with thought for integral ecology foremost. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Logan.
Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, Marcelino Rivera, 5536 West Allwood Drive. So yeah, I echo everyone's comments already. In addition, from Open Records requests that I have had fulfilled finally from the city, there's question about how many homes can even be built in this area because of the high water table. And this is being built around wetlands. You're considering building a new entryway that would intersect wetlands, correct? Potentially?
Only if the wetland is exempt from regulations.
So, and then you're also you're also impacting the ecological development and the ecosystem that's already over there. So again, in finishing, I echo everybody else's statements and just urge you guys to consider caution. I hope nobody has been taken to the woodshed, and that this isn't just going to be something that is just forced through, because we've seen how other things have played out that have been forced through without the consideration of development when it comes to sound issues and not listening to them. We've also heard and seen the impacts of not listening to the citizens and residents and how those things have played out. So I urge you all to consider seriously everybody that's in here, everybody that's watching, and what the recommendations have been given, and consider those when you make your vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Debbie Davis, 9460 South 96th Street. I agree with everything that's been said, and I'm also really concerned about the wetlands surrounding and within that area. I see that the development needs a second access road, and you're saying you could build one if an exemption was made, but if an exemption is made, then you're disturbing that wetland. I also think with this level of density, there's no way to process the runoff water that won't hurt the wetlands within and around this property. Also, I noticed in the city development report, staff report, that actually there were concerns from the fire department and the police department that weren't mentioned. For the fire department said that they didn't feel like they could serve this area according to industry standards, given their staffing and their locations. And the police are also very concerned about one access road. And there was also that fiscal impact study that was done about proposed developments along Ryan Road that said that the tax revenue from these properties won't support those services. So they won't be served well. It'll create a larger tax burden on the rest of us, and it'll be environmentally damaging, and it will overwhelm a road that's already overwhelmed. And I also feel like we need to, if we want to develop in these areas, we need to look at, and I believe it's talked about in the UDO, more conservation subdivisions or cluster development where we put houses closer together and leave large areas open, wild, for better drainage, water drainage, and for better conservation. So I would hope that we would vote, that our commission would vote against this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Representative Skronsky, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Ken Skronsky, 8642 South 116th Street. I live down 116th Street, 1 mile from this project, and I'm very familiar, being my past position of the city here. This is the old Clark Farm, I believe, and the access, like Mr. Januszewski has said, Ryan Road would not hold the traffic, and it's very dangerous right now with what goes through that because it's a shortcut. And everybody goes through it pretty fast, and you have the elevation of the road going to the west. It's not good. The project is too dense for that area, and the project should not be approved as it is planned right now. It's not good for that area. It should be opened up much more, and I just don't think it's good planning to what they have presented. A second road should be an immediate requirement, but you have a lot of obstacles to get a second road there because you really only have 116th Street and Ryan, and that's it. And 116th Street will not take any more volume. You got 140 lots, that means 280 cars, because every house in there will probably have 2 cars. So I don't think this should be approved. It should go back, and it needs a lot more consideration. I understand the residents around there. I'm one of the residents. I've traveled this road and this area very well. I used to represent it. So I don't think this is a good plan. It is too dense, and I understand they're trying economics. They want to make as much money as they possibly can on here, but it's not a good plan. It's not good for the community and that portion of Franklin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Yes, someone else. James Topitsis, 9460 South 96th Street. Appreciate the opportunity to share, to speak this evening in the public meeting. I echo everyone's sentiments. I won't repeat what's been said. I do understand a few points, though, that should be reiterated. One, I understand that the city development staff actually recommends against this particular proposal for, I think, some of the reasons that have already been noted. Also want to reiterate the point that based on a financial analysis, that actually tax revenue would not cover services or costs involved in this. It would seem to me, based on the mission of the city, that indeed, we do want to provide an opportunity for financial development. But everyone I've spoken with, I haven't had a lot of conversations, but the people that I've spoken with suggest that there are much more optimal places to actually cite this development. And it raises the question, why here? Who's going to benefit most from this? And certainly not the neighbors, and potentially not even the residents, according to what I'm hearing. And I would just, I sort of thirst for a conversation where all features, all factors are actually acknowledged when you are making a proposal to the City Planning Commission and the mayor. And perhaps that will happen in conversation. But there's a lot that wasn't said in your proposal. And to me, that's a disappointment. Perhaps I'm not understanding the process well. But thanks for your time and appreciate what's been said already.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? You guys should be used to hearing me say that. Anybody? Okay. Nobody else rise. I'll close the public hearing on this matter. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Haley.
Thank you. I guess I'll start with full disclosure. I live directly adjacent to this property, not contiguous with it. The lower right-hand corner is a property I've lived on for over 20 years. I'm very familiar with this piece of property and its history. I'm in complete concurrence with staff's original comments. I think they're valid. There are ways to mitigate them and work around, but I think you're working from a whole. The real problem is the sheer number of units out there. This is a geometric exercise in how to lay out properties and fit them all in and avoid the obvious. With my background as a landscape architect, going through the documents extensively, I'm seeing all kinds of red flags, and I'll briefly try to go through some of them for you. One, and this is just for looking at, this was my exercise. I went through here and highlighted the two types of hydric soils that are present on the site that are wet, high water table, should not be built upon, and should have been the first thing that was looked at. And if you look, there's very little white. The yellow and the pink are hydric soils. It's the bulk of the property. Should have been the first disqualifying item, or at least driven them to a conservation subdivision or something that tried to work around those soil types. The drainage patterns, okay. The golf course up on the north, the top part, the west side there, that whole golf course drains through this site, through the corner. See the green tongue? That water is all coming off the entire golf course and the backside of the subdivision, and it flows down and across the backside. That's why there's no houses there. But I'd love to know whether the stormwater as laid out, thank you, is accommodating all the flow coming in from this area. Certainly it's been designed to accommodate the runoff from the streets, the houses to the streets. I've also got significant problems with overall drainage, because when you have this situation with water running at the backs of houses all along here, you're going to have a very hard time keeping the existing flows of water in and contained and moving this way, okay? The site, in general, if there was room to drain everything, would make a lot of sense. But these lots are so small, less than half of what we normally would have, that there is barely enough room to utilize the backyards. The lower left, the smaller lots, 15-foot proposed side yards. Excuse me, 7.5. That means 2 houses can be within 15 feet of each other, wall to wall. Where do you put the sidewalk that gets you to your backyard, the landscaping, the drainage swales that need to go between buildings to carry the sump pump water off and all that? You can't get all of these lots to drain to the street. So all of the peripheral lots are going to drain out to where they always have been, okay? I'm not going to sit here and go through the whole thing. The drainage is very complex, and actually it's simple. It's complex when you come in and try to jam these many buildings and roofs in there. As long as we're talking about wetlands, a second entrance is critical, I think, to safety, and I'll touch more on that. But, uh-oh. I'm sorry.
There you go.
This wetland, where we're proposing that they try and get a second entrance, there's a delineated wetland in there. If you think you can get the exemption from the state and the Fed and go through the natural resource special exception process the city requires, then do it now, not later. This parcel here, it's not showing on here because they're not including it as part of their development, but they own it. But there's a linear wetland all along here that shows up on the natural resource protection plan. It hasn't been accounted for because it's technically off the parcel. So you most likely won't be able to have this emergency access or that drive. And until you find out for sure, we're just wasting time spinning wheels. Another big one.
Could we maybe have some dialogue while we're talking about this?
Mayor's choice.
Kevin, is that all right?
I don't mind. It's mayor's choice. It's his meeting.
Because I think we should,
Well-
there's a lot of things coming here, and I think we should have a little back and forth.
I'm okay with that, Steve, but I don't want to have back and forth because it's a public hearing. I want to let everybody have their piece.
Okay.
So I would encourage Brian to take some notes.
No,
I have many concerns because I've taken the time to study this.
Kevin, you turned your microphone off. Or I did, or somebody did.
Okay. I'll try to name the problems that I see, and hopefully we can work through them. West Shore Pipeline operates a 16-inch petroleum pipeline, not natural gas, petroleum. It provides gasoline to our airports, runs the whole length, western edge of Milwaukee County, basically. The major distribution network. It lies within feet of these property boundaries. Everybody who's got a house, you know, someday you're going to want to plant a bush or a tree out there or something. This is wrought for conflicts. If there ever required work or, heaven forbid, an emergency, a leak in the pipe, anything, you wouldn't be able to get out of here fast enough. And they need to get in here and do this. I have a lot of experience working with these people. I know it runs right off my backyard. They come through every couple of years and clear cut everything. And they fly it with helicopters regularly, several times a year, looking for leaks. So it's a very serious public safety concern, especially in a subdivision that you choose to put only one entrance on. And I know we're trying to get the other ones. I don't think you're going to find them. And the suggestion of connections here or here for other streets won't work because that's all in Nature Conservancy and can't be developed. So you bring traffic in here, you've got all of the drainage in theory is going to curb and gutter in the streets, capturing it, taking it to these basins. Water will have to be brought through all these areas and find its way out to the system. And then lo and behold, we've got 2 detention basins here that aren't fully designed yet, but those detention basins discharge to wetlands. You can't do that. You can discharge it onto your property and run it towards the wetlands. But again, it hasn't been engineered. You haven't looked at that. At least we're not seeing it yet. And I don't want to argue civil engineering or all of that, but I do know something about this, and I'd love to have the discussion, maybe not appropriate for here, but you've got issues. So big picture is you've got a site that doesn't want to have this. I've always envisioned that there would be a subdivision in there. I've looked at it for 25 years from my yard and said, well, there'll be a nice subdivision there some year. 140 some houses, 180 some houses, ridiculous. everything that was said about Ryan Road, 100% true. You won't be able to get in and out of this driveway in the morning. There'll be traffic backed up with everybody trying to get people to school and whatever. It's too many units. We understand the density isn't there. It's too many units for this piece of land to hold. That's my firm belief. We could go on and on. I'm not going to go through all this stuff. The density is too much. You've got problems with drainage. Your soils are poor. The second axis is probably not doable. And I understand that you've submitted a letter to the pipeline company asking about this. They didn't give you an answer until they see your grading plans. And I can tell you from what I know about them, they're going to have issues with those basins that close to that. But again, that's for them. But one more thing that should be resolved prior to us even thinking about this on the bigger thing. This bothers me as a planner, which I've done my whole life. This is what we call spot zoning. The existing zoning, everything around here is R3. It's what it has been for 25, 30 years. But now for your convenience or profit, we have to change that. So we're going in, we're taking one little pocket and making that different than everything else and different than what the plan has been for 20, 30 years. So you show up with a plan and we're supposed to recommend approval of it. I think you got a whole bunch of issues that should in fact be resolved before this goes any further. You need to know about the pipeline, you need to know about access, and I just don't know how you're going to deal with the water. I'm anxious to see that stormwater management plan for this, because you have large quantities of water moving in from all sides. Oh, and I didn't mention the fact that these are wet soils. My understanding is that there's drain tiles all over these fields. And the first thing you do when you go in, you build roads and storm sewers and building basements, is you disrupt, tear out the drain tiles, and now your wet soils don't drain and the water lays there. There's a huge body of water north of this. Ryan Creek, Dumpkeys Lake, it is wet, wet, wet. And if you just, are we done now? The site right now, this is where the existing farmstead and residence is, and the driveway there. Those are the dry areas. Farmers aren't fools. They built where it's dry. All of this is the stuff that's going to come to haunt you. And again, I'm not the elected official here, but you've got alders that are going to be fighting phone calls with this for years. Traffic congestion, water backups. My neighbor's sump pump is discharging into my backyard. This is just too much plan for this space, in my humble opinion, and I can't support it. And if you want to go back and forth, you can.
Okay, what I didn't tell you is we don't do the clapping and cheering and that kind of thing, because it's not fair to the other people in the audience. Commissioner Leon. And then we'll go to Mr. DeCleen.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor. I believe the public hearing portion has ended, right?
Close the hearing.
Yeah, so the public hearing. So I have my own questions, but I would like to hear the applicant's answers to Commissioner Haley's questions. And he had a bunch in there, but if we could go through some of the more important points, Commissioner Haley, to give the applicant the opportunity to address them to the best of their ability.
Great.
Okay, so pick one and let us know who's going to do it.
You want to do it?
Brian?
Sure, I'm happy to.
His name and address and stuff. It's on.
Brian Lindgren, Newman Developments. I appreciate commissioners allow us to present this, Mr. Mayor. It's important to get some of these considerations on the table, because you're going to have to make a decision, and we want to have that opportunity to address them appropriately. I think the first two I want to address have to do with the density. I mean, let's go back to the comprehensive plan. This is residential on the comprehensive plan. Residential is what we've presented. R3 is the underlying zoning, the PDD district. It establishes a density. What we've brought forward is less than the density that is allowed for in the R3. It is designed differently than what the R3 specifications are, but it is under the density that would be allowed in the R3 district. The other comments brought up about traffic, within the packet is a very extensive traffic impact analysis done by a traffic engineer. We respect that concern. The traffic engineer did a study. They had attendants on site counting vehicles and researching the nearby intersections. And the conclusion was that intersection improvements outside of this area are not necessary. This road can handle the additional traffic that would come from residential development. Their recommendations are that of acceleration and deceleration lanes as turn out and turn into this entrance. So I think that's an important note as well. While I'm not, third point, I guess, fourth or whatever I'm on, in regards to stormwater. I'm not a civil engineer either, nor a stormwater expert, but we, Newman Developments, have developed nearly 5,000 lots. We've preserved 2,700 acres of land across southeast and central Wisconsin. We do take this seriously, and we do a lot of time researching what will work and what won't. The stormwater, it will be planned for and designed. The DNR specifications require that we account for all of the off-site flows and on-site flows and make sure that what leaves the site is at the same volume and velocity as it was prior to any development. That's a very important note. So while we don't have the details, nor is our civil engineer here to comment specifically on stormwater, we trust in their opinion, and when the design is complete, it will be implemented per their recommendations, per the review of staff engineers, per the review of DNR stormwater specialists.
Regarding stormwater, your staff, sorry.
Yep. I'm just going down the list if I could, please. West Shore Pipeline has been contacted. We have interacted on other developments with West Shore Pipeline. They have this pipeline continues. They have other pipelines within the state. Their primary concern is grading. That's accurate. So any grading that would occur within their easement is subject to their review and determination. It's very important to note that no grading at this time is being proposed within their easement. These easements at times run through people's yards, through common areas, through public lands, and so on. They are monitored extensively by West Shore Pipeline. When the time comes to cross it with an emergency access road, that will have to be permitted through them as well. When the time comes to bring water under it, that will have to be permitted through them as well. These are permits that they will grant if the engineering and design checks off and their requirements. Those interactions have already begun, and we feel that is something that can progress if this development progresses. Not really a point of the zoning conversation, which is focused on the use, the number of lots, and so on and so forth. So, and then in regards to the general soil questions, soil studies are underway. We understand the nature of hydric soils. There are other categories, non-hydric soils, built on all over the state. We do want to know where groundwater levels are. It's important to the people who live here. It's important to us that we try to keep them dry. So there's a lot of consideration taken into that account. So beyond that, we are very excited about the development. We think it'd be a fantastic fit for this area of the city. It's an area where sewer was run. It was designed to be a residential area. The sewer odor, of our understanding, is part of the problem comes from the fact that there's not enough flows coming through it. So some of that could be resolved by actually having some users in this area of town. We've had conversations with fire and police to explain the nature of the entrances and the uses. The reason it was placed, our entrance, which we consider a dual divided boulevard entrance, 80-foot wide, two 24-foot wide lanes, was for allowing access if for some crazy reason it is blocked. One side or the other can be used in two-way traffic. That's not the intent, but it could be done in emergency. The length of that boulevard is 275 feet. Once you're past that 275 feet, there are 2 points of access to everywhere within this development. If for some reason that access is completely blocked, both sides, that's the reason behind the emergency access. That emergency access runs out to an outlot, which is identified here, is not included in the development because there are conversations going on with the owner that could be part of a trail HUD for that future trail. So it enters onto that parking lot. So any concerns over wetlands or access will have to be addressed when that comes. The entrance location as well has been carefully selected because it's at the crest of a hill. By putting 2 entrances or moving that entrance somewhere else, we're going to be somewhere on a side slope of a hill. That'll do one thing and one thing only, but make it less safe. We want to have our entrance at the safe location where the drivers and the pedestrians can see both sides, what traffic is coming, and exit and enter appropriately. Appreciate it. I don't know if these gentlemen have something to say as well, but.
Okay. Commissioner Leon. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let's do Commissioner Haley. Push your button.
Okay. I don't want to get on this point by point. My original concern was not with the density, it's the number of units. We've already talked about the density. We're talking 142 new houses tucked in here. Okay?
Please explain the difference that you're saying between units and density, because density, I believe, is measured in units.
I'm speaking of number of units, houses constructed in the future with cars, people coming, school children.
142.
150, 300 trips a day minimum. I don't want to go back and forth with you. My concern was not with the density, it's with the number of units being served by one entrance in a site that you can't get to in an emergency any other way. Okay? The pipeline, I know you can work through all that, but where's the planning for when there is an emergency? They need to get in fast, and they'll just come and they'll do whatever they have to. So my bigger point here, we're the Plan Commission. We recommend to the council and we advise. And given everything I'm looking at and seeing, and I've gone through these plans in great detail several times, all the different revisions, I am not comfortable with saying to the Common Council, go ahead and approve this. This is a good thing for Franklin. Even though it doesn't pay for itself, even though there's all these unanswered questions we don't have answered yet, go ahead and approve it, because this is the last time it'll be here until you come in with the site plan. So my caution is that we're an advisory agency to the city. So I feel compelled to share my thoughts and concerns as a resident of Franklin. And I have very serious concerns, among other things, the whole public safety end of this all. So just understand, you're talking to us so that we hopefully make a formidable recommendation to the council. And I'm telling you, based on what I've seen, and I know a lot about construction, and I know you guys do great stuff, this is too much stuff in the bag, and I cannot recommend that to the council.
Mr. St. Ange, you're pushing it. Yep, there you go.
So, as most of you know, I'm a city engineer, and as part of my daytime job, I sit on Common Council, or Plan Commission. No, I don't mean that. Plan Commission, excuse me. And so a lot of the things that I heard tonight are very valid concerns. We typically, when we see these developments, those are things that we have concerns about. So, but by the time it hits this meeting, generally most of my concerns are resolved, and I'm very comfortable with the plan. So I'm going to try to run through. I was taking notes as folks were talking, and I just want to kind of go through one by one. As far as pedestrian safety, that is a huge concern out there. The people walking out, pedestrian concerns. That's why we're working so hard on the trail system. We got a 116th Street trail that's coming through there on the old We Energies. Plus, we're got another development in place. We call it the Ryan Creek Trail across the southern end of Franklin. Basically, start there at what's been referred to as the trailhead,
It will continue somewhat southwest or southeast and continue, and you'll eventually be able to hook up to the Root River trail extension. So we are working on those. I do understand that pedestrians and bicycles on Ryan Road, 116th Street is not ideal, and we've been working on it for several years. We have a couple grants that we're trying for right now. This first one, quite honestly, I don't expect to get. It's an air quality grant. But this next one, I fully intend that we're very, very poised to receive it. We barely missed it last time, and we've made the grant application sexier, if you will, to get the project. So I really anticipate we're going to get that happening this year. So for all the folks that live out there now and will live out there in the future, there will be a lot of nice places to walk around and avoid the traffic completely. So it was discussed about the water. You are correct. There is no water out there right now. The tax increment district to the south, basically on the south side of Ryan Road, had $1.5 million for a water main that was to come up from the south, and we're taking that and provide sewer to that. It's been referred to as the other development, the condos on the south side of Ryan Road. We're talking with both developers, and we're working out a situation where we'd like to bring that water right down Ryan Road from Ryan and Loomis is where it's stubbed right now, and we would continue that. And I received an estimate from our engineer. I think the engineer and contractors from not only Newman Development, but Bear Development on the south side, and I feel pretty good about our numbers. We can make that happen. So we're going to work and make that a project. So there will be water out there in the future. The money's there for it with the tax increment district, with the other projects that are going on around there. Mentioned the odor, and I could probably sit here and talk for a couple hours about odor. I know you folks are very interested in that, and we've been working our best to get rid of that issue. We've made a lot of stride. I should say strife also. The situation is we put a huge valve in there to keep air coming back from the east. It was mentioned that we do need more flow into the sewer to actually help that issue out, and that is very correct. As a sewer guy, I do like the fact that there's more homes in here to add more sewage to go into that. We're using some special valves that would keep that air from backing up into the subdivision. We'll make comments on that when we review your plans. But long story short, it's the Muskego line coming through. The sewage sits in those force mains so long it turns septic. So we've installed a large device at the county line, and we've also installed a scrubber that you see out there, and we will get that operational. We're waiting till the Waukesha issue gets out of the way so we can do it. We were hoping to get it done a lot sooner, but the Waukesha issue has caused a lot of issues for us. But when that all gets said and done, it's going to work much better. So as far as the Snowmobile Trail, that's a good question. I have no answer for that one. I suppose it's whoever owns the property can dictate whether snowmobiles go across or not. I would like to know more about the snowmobile trails because, like I said, we're working on the Ryan Creek the Ryan Creek Trail system, and I'd like to find out who's the actual responsible party for the snowmobile trail systems that's tagged out there. I'd like to have a conversation. So, okay, please, I would appreciate knowing that. But whether it's this subdivision or another subdivision, I mean, eventually that, like you said, someday somebody was going to develop a subdivision here, so that's going to be affected. So I can't address that. I don't know that that's necessarily our concern here, but so noted. Road traffic on Ryan Road. Acknowledge that it's not really the people that live here that's the problem, it's the people trying to cut through. If you notice, we put little pinwheels up there, and short of trying to make a big cul-de-sac at the county line from each direction, I don't know what else we can really do with that issue. I could make it wider to make it safer for pedestrians to walk around, but that just increases the speed for everybody. We've thought about this hard. We're toying with the idea of maybe some painted things in the surfaces. The best idea I have so far is when this new trail goes through, I want to put some sort of flashing lights, and maybe that might slow folks down a little bit as they come through there. But I'm open to any and all suggestions. I've heard mention of roundabout. I love roundabouts. I just don't know necessarily think that's a practical situation here, because it's not this entrance that's going to cause a problem. As mentioned, there was a traffic impact analysis, and we did have a concern about the traffic. We required that study, and it is a pretty thick, substantial study, and it discussed the acceleration, deceleration lanes, and people will be able to get out and so forth. So although cut-through traffic is a problem, it's not a problem where people won't be able to get out and proceed. So I do appreciate the fact there will be more cars there. But Ryan Road is one of our major arterials roads in the city, and so the drainage through the property. I guess all I can say, I haven't studied that too much right now, but I can say that they will have to comply with not only city standards, but MMSD and DNR standards for quality and quantity as they go through that, just like any other development that happens in the city. The landfill issue with the odor, I don't know that I can help you with that one. I can tell you that there is a new subdivision going up a lot closer to the landfill, and they're selling lots like crazy. I don't know that we can prevent someone from developing homes just because landfill. I do know there's been a lot of complaints, but that is probably an ongoing issue. But folks are working around it and still developing. The high water tables. So noted on the hydric soils. If we restricted subdivisions from going in because of hydric soils, 90% of Franklin wouldn't be developed. We get phone calls all the time, sump pumps running all the time, those kind. And I appreciate their issues, but that's how Franklin is developed. That is Franklin. It's I somewhat jokingly call it the home of the wetlands. So we do have many wetlands all around. It's hydric soils. Trying to find a place in Franklin without hydric soils is extremely difficult, as the map that Kevin colored up for us is not unlike most of Franklin. Misinformation, I don't know what I can do to help with that. I mean, I try to answer questions when folks call me, and from the other developments, I can tell you I've really tried to answer questions best of my ability, and it seems like it goes in one ear out the other, so I don't know that I can address that. Fire department, very correct. There is a concern about having fire responses. That's why, so to solve that, we need a fourth fire station, or as your fire chief has suggested, that instead of doing a fourth fire station, we're going to move fire station number 2 from 60th Street to the DPW facility. And there have been extensive studies to look at the response times. By moving that fire station, it drastically improves the response time to this area. Fire department will have better access. So I think that area has been addressed. The police department has a concern about just another secondary access. I do think that that's probably still one of my lingering issues. I would like to see a second access. What you see there was somewhat of a compromise with the last development that came through. We said, well, instead of, if you can't give us one, or if you can't give us, 2 entrances, can you give us one entrance that basically functions as 2 entrances? And that's what they've done here. Having said that, I just came up with an idea while I'm sitting here listening to everything. We have, and I do appreciate the secondary access through the what I say is the trailhead part, but maybe there's a way we could maybe expand that to be more of an entrance with the trailhead. So maybe you come in and the trailhead's right there, but it still functions as an entrance to the subdivision. That might be a way to get maybe a second entrance that you're already planning to do anyway, but maybe make it a little more prominent. And maybe you can actually make the trailhead more of a feature of the subdivision as you enter, something like that. I think that's something that we can definitely work through, and I'd be happy to work with you on trying to develop that. As far as the tax increment, I can tell you we just had a finance director that just retired, but he ran the numbers. This does add a lot of tax increment to the city. What is somewhat nice is the fact that it's not in the tax increment district, so the city gains immediate access to those increased taxes as that goes through. As far as the cluster subdivision, that is a situation we've always talked about. the idea is that, you're allowed high density if you have open spaces nearby, or, part of the land, open spaces, but this is really almost like a large cluster subdivision. When you look around it, I believe, actually, MMSD, I don't believe owns that anymore. I believe they gave it to Malk, no? Okay. So anyway, there is a huge portion of land to the north, huge portion of land to the east that will never be developed, and that's really the open space, if you will, will always be there. So this is really in merit somewhat like the purpose of that cluster. Let's see. Oh, and I guess the last thing, the pipeline. I can't say that I've worked with that pipeline since I've been here in Franklin, but I have in my previous consulting jobs worked with other pipelines, similar pipelines. They are very concerned about when you dig around them, but they do have means and methods of how you do that. So as long as you follow their directions, that is okay. I do understand they are very concerned about accessing if something bad were to happen. And again, that comes in part if you have that, especially if you have an emergency access, I think that satisfies it. But if you definitely have that more of a prominent entrance access, that would be nice too. So I agree with most of the folks, in fact, that there were a lot of concerns when we started this project, but we've gone through several iterations with the past development and this development proposal. And I believe, at least as far as I'm concerned, that's why I'm comfortable with it. Sorry for such a long tirade.
Let's do Alderman Hanneman.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Glenn, for addressing so many of those questions. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening. One of the lingering questions, as the city engineer mentioned, is with the single access. And I understand that this is not a site plan review, but I have to wonder if, should a site plan come back, if you were to lose the clubhouse and the pool and take that entrance straight through, would that be an improvement for public safety so that they wouldn't have to immediately turn right, turn left as they come in? I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's something that bears consideration.
Mr. DeClean.
My name is Steve DeClean. I'm with Newman Development. My name is Steve DeClean. I'm with Newman Developments. So I just want to, our intent, I just want to make it really clear. We did talk to the police chief, and he expressed comfort with the way we've designed this with the 24 feet widths. To your specific question, I think the longer that single access point gets, the less comfortable he'd actually get. Because what they're looking for is how many feet until you can break into multiple directions. So I actually think stretching that street out would actually run opposite of what you might think.
Okay.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, I also add, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the longer blocks you have, that's what encourages folks to speed. So the shorter segments or the shorter segments that you have to make a turn or some of those kinds of things actually very much helps the quote speed issues.
Just for the record, sorry, you saw before. Just for the record, there's an email in our packet dated November 22nd from the police chief to the Newman team. Based on below explanation, the police department is satisfied with your plans. So it's not hearsay. Does it for you?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to just address one concern, and that's the financial aspect of this. Is what the statement is that the development does not pay for itself. There has never been a more true statement, but that statement applies to absolutely every residential development in the state. In the state, there's not a single residential development that pays for itself. Why is that? It's the cost of children in school districts. So you say, well, no, how much is it in Franklin? On your tax bill that you're going to get next, probably Saturday, $6,973 for every child in the city goes on your tax bill. So This is a hot button issue for me. I've been arguing this since I sat at the second chair. Residential subdivisions don't pay for themselves. That's why you need commercial and industrial development to balance that out. So that argument, it applies to this one, it applies to the Bear development, it applies to all residential. None of your houses pay for your students or your cost on the city. However, having said that, something I said, some people don't like answers, but anyway, okay. So the other thing that's important to know, when we talk about cost to the city, each one of these houses will pay roughly, I want to say impact fees are about $9,000. So they'll pay $9,000 each against the cost to develop. So that'll pay for police, it'll pay for fire equipment, it'll pay for library, water development, parks, library, sewer and water. So that's an income against the cost of the house plus taxes. So I just want to give you all that information just so you had it. Commissioner Leone.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess one of the things about waiting for others to ask questions, especially people a lot smarter than me, it answers my questions. So, city engineer answered some questions I was going to ask about Ryan Road, and then between city engineer and the mayor about the tax revenues that Ms. Davis brought up. So I guess I'll just make two comments. One, I want to thank everyone who spoke, especially the two former alders who have now left, and Commissioner Haley. I, for one, certainly listened to the comments, and they raised questions, and I like to be able to hear the applicant's answers to them, whether or not they satisfy whoever asked the question or the questions they raised on my own. So thank you all for bringing those up, and to the applicant for taking a list. As Commissioner Haley, who's very well informed on this, went through a lot of very valid questions. I came into this very candidly, very supportive of the project. A lot of the questions that Commissioner Haley brought up put some questions into my mind. Mostly been addressed to my mind. One key thing I do want to agree with, I think it was the first, maybe it was the second speaker, and that is the other projects in the area. While the mayor was limiting comments during this public hearing to this, they are certainly in consideration for every project, how it's going to impact all of it. And I think you've heard that from everybody who's spoken and asked questions on the Plan Commission tonight. So please note that, while I do only speak for myself, I think you can hear from the members of this board, an advisory board, that your concerns are heard and considered. And if they can be mitigated and move forward with the project for growth, that's the recommendation that I would make. And if not, then I would agree with Commissioner Haley and not make that recommendation. But I'm comfortable with what specifically the city engineer and the applicant has addressed, and I personally think it should move forward. So with that, thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Haley, again? Is your...
I did. I guess a specific question I would have related to the water, because I didn't understand. I figured water would be brought in there. With the extension of water to feed this subdivision, if it moves forward, will the residents existing on Ryan Road be forced to connect, and will they be special assessed and have fees for connections? Thank you.
Thanks for asking that.
So that's always Common Council can always do that, but being a TID project, I can tell you the history along Loomis was no. They are not required to connect. If they should connect within 10 years, they have to pay their proportionate share. And if Historically, or with the other development, we've required that when the developer gets reimbursed, and we would actually be reimbursed. So the answer is no, they will not be required to connect. If they should connect, within 10 years, they will have to pay their proportionate share. If they should choose to connect in year 11 on, they can basically connect at just our normal connection fees.
And it's the cost for water plus the.
Yes, so if they were to connect, say year 5, they have to pay their proportionate share plus all the normal connection fees that they would normally do.
Thank you. Which brought up a follow-up question. My understanding was that TID fees can't be expended outside of the TID district. How are you going to use that to pay for water to this development?
So this isn't outside the TID district because the TID goes up to Ryan Road, but then you can also go up to a half mile outside of a TID to serve that. But this is serving. So the TID that's existing actually went up to Victory of the Lamb Church is where the water line was connected, and extended all the way down to their facility. So that was allowable under the TID law.
And this further extension will be allowable as well.
Yes, that was actually in the TID plan.
Okay, then I'll just end with one final comment. And that's, a lot of people brought up great questions, concerns. I did. We had some good dialogue back and forth. I think most people here would agree that all of those questions weren't answered or addressed. We think this might work, this might go, we'll know further. My concern is we're advancing this to the council, and after that, it's just full speed ahead. We won't know until they come in for a site plan review how we resolve the issues with emergency access to a pipeline, with the interface. We're being given a snapshot of a pretty picture of what this might look like. And again, I'm having a hard time coming up with the hardcore answers that I know I would have to answer before I could vote to support it. Enough said.
Practical proposal. Just a practical proposal. Practical proposal regarding that pipeline, because you're absolutely correct that pipeline companies are not easy to deal with. Part of the problem is until we get a full set of construction drawings, they won't permit anything. Okay, so, and that comes at the very end of the process.
If I might, they would. If you went to them now and said, here is the lateral extents of our grading, we expect 3 feet of cover. They don't need the detailed plans. They don't know at all what you're proposing. If you sat down with them, they would look at it and they go, okay, we can make this work, shift your basin a little bit this way. I'm still overly concerned about the emergency access. Police, fire, and the pipeline crews will get in there within 15 minutes if they can. And there's no way in or out. You can't get into the site without coming through the road. If there was an emergency, you can't come in from the east. You can't come in from the west. You can't come in from the north. The only way in is Ryan Road. And you've effectively built a line of houses that precludes access to that back corner.
I don't see any different. I don't see any difference in its current condition as it sits right now regarding access. I don't see any complications of access with what we're doing than what the condition is at this moment.
I'll drop it. I would like to think that our city officials would be very concerned about the public safety aspects of that pipeline and what you're proposing next to it.
Okay. So my thoughts on the pipeline is I think that's a really important point. It is something that's going to happen at the end, and I think it should be a condition of the final plat, because we're going to need to get all the way through the process to get the paperwork to Walsh Shore that they need. So that's, if we could make that a condition of the final plat, that's, I think, an important and practical check on that. And then the other thing, I just want to make one final thing where I think we really would love your recommendation on, and that is, I really believe in the single access point to the development. I think it's safest. I think it's a nice marketing thing. I think it sets up the subdivision well to have one huge, well-landscaped boulevard entrance that looks onto the pool. I just think that appeals to people. There's not a ton of space there on Ryan for a second access point, and your police chief is comfortable with it. Your fire chief is comfortable with it. And I would ask that we please consider just the single access point, because I think it really, there's just not a ton of space on Ryan with the way that street angles off. So could we maybe just have a conversation specific to that?
The only comment I would make
Wait,
is.
Commissioner Leon. Push your button, thanks.
I guess from my perspective, the concerns about a second access point have been addressed, so I would be okay with dropping that condition from the requirement, from the motion.
Commissioner Morrow, then Commissioner.
Just real quick, so I want to just reiterate what I said earlier. I still prefer a secondary, but it's not a hard concern for me. I'm okay. As far as I'm concerned, the previous subdivision that had the double entrance on there was a compromise that I was okay with, and I'm still okay with. So
My only comment again is, can't we get these answers before we have to make this decision? Both of the alternatives talked about for the second entrance are impacted by wetlands. We don't know the extent, we don't know state or federal jurisdiction. That would be the first question I'd be getting my arms around before we even talk about a second exit. Is it physically possible? If the DNR comes back and says, those are statutory wetlands, you aren't touching them. And it's your only two other options. So answer those questions early rather than later. Goodbye.
The city engineer did raise something that he spoke to earlier, and if there were a way, that emergency option that you talked about widening it, I would ask the applicant to consider that, if that could work for a second access. So I'd still be okay with not the second access, but I think it bears consideration, and would ask the applicant if they would be willing to work with staff to consider what city engineer proposed earlier.
We'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
I would like to make a motion to table this item to at least the next Plan Commission meeting, to give a better opportunity to address and or alleviate some of the concerns that Commissioner Haley has, and to just get a more conclusive answer to some of these wetland issues prior to making the decision.
Okay, good, that's fine. To be fair to the applicant, let's give them a list of things that we want to have addressed. So possible second access, right?
What is the wetland issue? I guess.
To be clear,
We were.
We're losing control of this. Sorry, Kirk. It's fair for us to answer that question, absolutely. So let's get to that. So the two commissioners that had issues were Leon and Commissioner Haley. So let's do Commissioner Haley's list, and yes, please ask questions during the.
Michael? Okay. The first thing is, your natural resource protection plan clearly shows a wetland here and a wetland there. Those are the two places we're speaking of. This is off. So before we even have discussions about a second access, let's find out whether it's physically possible. Get out there, get your.
let me make this ask crystal clear. We don't want a second access. I don't think we need a second access. Your police chief and your fire chief agree that we don't need a second access. I'm asking this plan commission to consider this plan without a second access, with one huge boulevard with two 24-foot streets going into it. It's a practical solution that's been done in Franklin. We're not asking for an exemption to the wetlands. That's why we're not prepared with that answer, because that's always been our ask. And by the way, this was our ask when we went to the council with a concept plan 3 months ago, too. We've never shown a second access, and we don't want one.
I didn't have any.
I
think the applicant was okay with what I proposed to consider with the city engineer, but the applicant just said, did confuse me a little bit. So yeah, I know you don't want a second access point. You made that very clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with what the city engineer proposed earlier with that emergency and trying to work with staff on that, do you remain open to that option?
We'd remain open to that option, but we would prefer to not do it because there's a wetland crossing involved in that point.
Is it, you can see some sort of let's back up. What are you trying to show there on this plan here? Right there. What is this spot right here?
Yeah, that's a 12-foot emergency access.
So that is a 12-foot emergency access, and that's what you would will violate in a wetland. That's where it would be, right?
Right.
So instead of a 12-foot, could we widen that just a little bit? If nothing, just an entrance in for emergency issues.
Absolutely.
But absolutely make that as a feature, if you will, where if I lived in one of these spots right here, yeah, I could cut in and come past the trailhead and actually drive back in there. It would be nice to see a two lane. I would like to see that. It was a preference, but again, I am okay with a boulevard. That was again for the previous one. So
You want traffic riding on the bike path?
it would not ride on the bike path. It would cross over the bike path. It'd be like a driveway.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a pedestrian passing.
Well, the reality is if we table it, we got to give reason, we got to provide a reason to table that can then move this to a decision at the next meeting. So if we're going to table it, just to table it, that doesn't make sense to me. But if we're going to table it for a purpose, Commissioner Haley wants to talk about wetlands that are along Ryan Road that you obviously don't want to talk about. Perhaps a better delineation of the emergency access and would help that and help Commissioner Leone. But what are the other issues that you folks want to have addressed so that you can better make a decision?
Well, if I might, and with all due respect, many good concerns have come up, and we've heard potential answers for them, but I haven't heard anything definitive about how we do that. We'll look at the storm sewer when we get around to designing that. We'll get to the pipeline. When do we get the answers up front? I would say if we needed a reason to table it, it would be because of the legitimate concerns expressed by staff in their write-up. They've come up with workarounds for us, but their professional recommendation is to deny. That has some merit.
Based on the four
The planning staff made 4 conditions to their recommendation, that would shift their opinion from do not recommend to recommend. We immediately got rid of the 4th condition because that had to do with the 25-foot landscape buffer, which involves an outlot. So there are 3 concerns. The first of which is the second access. We've addressed that in as many ways as I think we can. We've addressed it by widening it, making 2 lanes wide, speaking with fire, speaking with police concerns, and then providing an alternative emergency access. I believe that's the best way we can address that one. The second one, we have no objection to. The second condition on there was to add some landscaping within a drainage easement, and we can work with staff to make sure that that's done effectively and correctly. The third concern was West Shore Pipeline, and our request on that one is that it not be a condition of the zoning approval, because that's something that requires a lot more engineering, investigation, and permitting, which can be done along with final engineering and final platting, not part of a zoning request. We're not saying we don't object to it. We just that's not something that can possibly be answered correctly at this time.
To read the recommendation, it reads, City Development staff does not recommend approval of Plan Development District Number 40 as presented. However, City Development staff would recommend approval of this PDD subject to conditions set forth, and then he lists those conditions. Another way to have written this, what we see often is, city staff does recommend it with the following conditions. It's just a different way to say that.
If I'm hearing correctly from the applicant, they do wish us to move forward and take a vote tonight. So I would withdraw my motion.
Okay, the motion is the property of the body. Yeah, the second was
Is already
Commissioner
second?
Haley. You withdraw your second? Okay, so the motion stands for table. So we'll take action on the motion to table. So the motion was to table to the 21st,
Third.
No,
January.
January
6.
6th. Thank you. So on that motion, let's just go ahead and take a roll call.
Mayor Olson?
I'm last.
Oh, okay, sorry. Commissioner Burkhart? Commissioner Haley? Yes. Engineer Morrow? No. Alder Hanneman?
No.
Commissioner Leone?
Okay, the motion is, does not require 4 votes. This is a procedural vote. 3 noes and 2 ayes, the motion fails. Given that,
Then I will move to recommend approval of an ordinance to create Section 15-3.0445 of the Franklin Unified Development Ordinance, establishing Plan Development District Number 40, Cape Crossing, and to rezone property from R3 Suburban Estate Single Family Residence District and C1 Conservancy District to Plan Development District Number 40, that is 12200 West Ryan Road, except for condition 1 in the draft ordinance.
is there a second? Wait a minute. And condition 4.
And condition 4. I'm sorry, thank you.
Seconded by Commissioner Leone. On the motion, what? 2 and 3 are still in. All right, let's,
I may not be able to speak. Are
yeah,
3 be modified?
we don't have time for this. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be that way, but Commissioner Leone's got to leave.
Just a note that the applicant is requesting to change number 3 from preliminary plat to final plat, just to defer the grading plans approval from the West Shore Pine Line easement.
Is that part of your
holder.
motion?
Yes.
Second? Okay, Mr. City Attorney.
Just for the record, there are some very minor technical changes to the draft that staff will work with, such as the first section starts out with definitions, but it should probably be titled exhibits, because that's what it's about, et cetera. Nothing of substance.
Okay, Mr. Eddy, please call the roll.
Commissioner Burkhart? Aye. Commissioner Haley?
No.
Engineer Morrow?
Aye.
Alder Hanneman?
Aye.
Commissioner Leone?
Aye.
Motion carries 4 ayes, 1 no, 1 absent, and no abstentions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Is the commission's wish to take a couple-minute break or keep going? Let's come back at 8:45.
China about circuit boards now.
Oh, yay.
Recording in progress.
Okay, a couple of record-keeping things. Commissioner Leone has left the dais. He left at 20 minutes to 9. It is now 9:47. We're back in open session. Plan Commission, we move on. We're going to skip an item. We're going to move on to item C3, Bear Development, Single Family Residential Subdivision, Comprehensive Master Plan Amendment and Rezoning. Mr. Eddy, you have a notice to read.
Yes, the City of Franklin Plan Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 9, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Common Council Chambers of Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin, 53132, to take public comments regarding an application by Bear Development Incorporated requesting approval of a rezoning from A2 Prime Agricultural District and C1 Conservancy District to R5 Suburban Single Family Residence District for property located at the 9800 block of South 112th Street, tax key number 892-9999002. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the requirements of Section 62.23, Paragraph 7D2 of the Wisconsin statutes and Division 15-9.0200 of the City of Franklin Unified Development Ordinance. A map showing the property affected, full legal description, the application, and all supporting materials are available for review and may be obtained from the city clerk by way of request to the Department of City Development at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin, 53132 during normal business hours. A copy of the proposed ordinance in draft form is available and open for inspection and by the public in the office of the city clerk at Franklin City Hall, same address, during normal business hours. The public is invited to attend the public hearing to provide input.
Okay, and this is yours anyway.
Yes, and the reason why we're here, after having been here in October on this same application, is primarily because there's a lovely little section of state statutes that says that, especially with regard to the comprehensive plan amendment, if a plan commission forwards a recommendation, which is to say no recommendation, the common council has nowhere to go. The statutes are fairly clear that you have to have a recommendation for either approval or denial. And the last time we had a vote on this, it was 3-3, which was no recommendation. So when it got to the council, they had nowhere to go. And so the applicant withdrew the application actually prior to the public hearing on the comprehensive plan amendment at the council. Henceforth, they refiled the application, as is their capacity to do so, because there is no waiting period on no decision. So we're back again for the same version of the thing that was discussed on October 21st. The applicant is requesting, and you can see it on the screen, the property, one portion of the Ignacic property, the northern portion, which is west and north of the Franklin Savannah. This property is approximately 34.5 acres. The applicant, no, scroll down. You control it, I don't. The applicant, no, down. What do you? Back. There you go. That, yeah, this is it. The applicant is proposing a 48-lot subdivision using the R5 district as the baseline. The property accesses off of 112th Street, approximately across from the southern end of Ryan Meadows, which is currently under development, across in through a wetland area, through another wetland area, and terminate at this access point here. There is another access point which basically deadheads at the other piece of the Ignacic property. It also accesses the back of another property adjacent to it, as well as heading north toward another property which has previously had some consideration for development and is currently undeveloped. The applicant is requesting this approval. There are two applications under consideration. One is a comprehensive plan amendment. The public hearing will be at the council, scheduled, noticed for the 4th of January. That is where public comments will be taken on that particular comment. Tonight's request is for the rezoning application, which is the public hearing before the Plan Commission tonight.
And as you know, I wasn't at the last public hearing, but this item is slightly different in as much as it removes this, what was this, 40-acre parcel. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So this
The previous application included another parcel south. It's further south. It was owned by the Vang property, by the Vang. It's down on the south end of the southern end of the tier. The overall is approximately 92 acres. This current application is for 34.5 acres.
Okay. Okay, this has been a properly noticed public hearing. The same rules apply. Give us your name and address and tell us what you want to tell us. I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward and let us know.
My name is Debbie Davis, 9460 South 96th Street. And even though this is a new application, at the last Plan Commission meeting, the proposal had been changed. So what we had talked about was this parcel, just this 35-acre parcel. And that's when the vote was tied. And at that time, there wasn't a city development staff recommendation on the amendment. And now there is, and that amendment is still, this proposal is still recommended that it not be approved. Sorry, I'm past my bedtime to talk. So I live in this district. I live in Briarwood, and in the comprehensive plan, there has been a park for 20 years, and we, at least in that plan, and we could use a park in that district in the southwest corner of Franklin. I think the city of Franklin could use a larger park. I know that we are growing all the time, and we've outgrown our wonderful Lions Legend Park when it comes to the 4th of July and the fireworks. We need a larger park. Last Plan Commission meeting, someone said, well, the comprehensive plan, I think he said, was obsolete, and that maybe that's, and maybe I misunderstood. What he was saying was obsolete. There might be some parts of the plan that's obsolete. I don't think this part of the plan was obsolete. It's really wonderful the way this city plan, city park was planned to buffer and give access to the Franklin Savannah. I think that was always the intention, that there'd be synergy between those parks. Maybe he was saying that the conservation districting, like that, is an obsolete designation because it's kind of changed. I hope he wasn't saying that the zoning was obsolete because now it's zoned agricultural and our farmers aren't obsolete. And it's important to preserve agricultural land. We have 4 or 5 farming families, and they're successfully farming what agricultural land we have left that's quickly disappearing. And I think that, and I know that's also part of the comprehensive plan, to try and preserve some of this agricultural land. And we need that section both to have access to the rest of the city park, and also because of the bike trail, and also because I don't think that there's any way to deal with stormwater runoff that isn't going to compromise the wetlands. And I guess there's not quite permission to run some lines to the county or neighbors, blah, blah, blah. But if we were to keep that as city park, that parcel, and use it for access for the bike trail and to get to other parts of the park, much of that land could still be rented out for farming. So it's a way that we could meet 2 goals, to preserve our agricultural land, which is important for the farmer's income. It's important for, in the future, our food security, and also important in maintaining people's sense that what brought them to Franklin and living in a semi-rural environment. So that's a perfect place for a city park. It's not a perfect place for subdivision, I don't feel like, again, because it compromises our environment, because it's very close to some industrialized areas, such as, I think the woman that was talking about the sanitary landfill, I talked to her, she thought that this is the property she was talking to. These are going to be nuisance properties. And so, and I'm just wondering, those properties that are selling really quickly now, if they're aware of the industrial uses close to them, the ones across the street. So I'm hoping that the commissioners and our elected officials will follow the recommendations of our professionals that study this and have recommended that it not get approved. Follow the recommendations of the citizens, follow the plan that was, these plans are developed by a lot of stakeholders with thousands of hours and dollars, I assume, and it was a very wise plan, and we'd like to stay with that plan. So, thank you. That's it for now. And I just one other thing. So I mean, I need to better understand this fiscal impact, but I'm not sure how business and industrial areas can pay for our schools when we kind of loan them millions of dollars that they use to pay for their own infrastructure. And then for 20 years, I mean, correct me, I might be wrong, they're just paying back their loan for their infrastructure. They're not paying for our schools. I mean, explain that to me. Someone, I guess somebody can, hopefully. All right, thanks. That's it.
Well, I'll do that for you right now, and then we'll keep on, unless somebody objects to that. You're absolutely correct. For businesses in a TIF district, their tax dollars, other than the base value, goes to pay back whatever the development costs are for the TIF that were in the project plan. Absolutely correct. But from then on, with 0 children in the school district, forever, their taxes go to counteract that differential. Remember, I said $9,673 per person, per child goes against your tax bill. And your tax bill is probably not much more than that. So that's the differential. And that's why businesses, you're correct about TIF districts, but generally businesses pay lots more in taxes and they don't use that much in terms of public services. So, anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi, Dan Kaminsky, 9880 South 112th Street. So one of the slides that was up shows a wetland study that was done in, I think, 2012 or 2014. And out of that came a conservation easement. And it covers a portion of my property. Yeah. And a portion of the property to the north of us. And in order to put houses in a road in the property just to the north of us there's going to have to be some sort of exception to that conservation easement. And I was wondering if that would affect mine as well. Portions of it make sense. Portions of it don't. At the bottom right of my property here, you can see that the conservation easement actually goes up to the like the front door of one of our barns, which is I'm not sure how that ever was written in place that way, and that barn has been there for 35 years. So that's my question, if there'd be a change to that conservation easement, and would that affect us? We have some input on that.
Staff? You want to get back to Mr. Kaminsky?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. So good.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Good evening.
My name's Dean Rogage. I own 25 acres directly north of that development, and I'm 100% for the rezoning and that whole development that they're doing. And I think it'll be a nice fit with what went in across the street also. So that's all I got to say.
Anyone else?
Karen Zalecki, 11736 West Loomis Road. With all these residential properties, the schools are kind of overcrowded now. Are we gonna like keep overcrowding them, or do you guys have a plan for additional schools or something for that? I mean, how are you gonna put all these kids that I assume are gonna be coming in these residential houses and already have packed schools?
I can tell you that the school district gets copies of all of these development proposals and has offered opportunities to comment on them, and they have not. So apparently they don't have an issue with it.
Or maybe
Now-
they do or don't have time to respond, because there's a lot going on. And I mean, obviously, and I mean, there's staff shortages going on. I mean, there's a lot of stress going on. I mean, we don't need more bodies in a smaller room.
You've made some value judgments there and some commitments for the school district. We don't get involved in their business. We let them know what's going on here. I, as a matter of fact, talked to the business administrator this afternoon about development, and he mentioned no concerns.
So
I got that number of
he
70.
said no concerns or no comment?
He did not have any concern. He did not mention any concerns to me.
Doesn't mean he doesn't have any. I'm sure there is concern. There is
You'll have to
concern. You
talk
got
to
to
them.
admit. You got to admit.
You'll have to talk to them, but they have not mentioned anything to us.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Hi, Mike Shago, 10250 West Ryan Road. And this public hearing is about the changing of the zoning, right? Not the project itself?
The application is concerning the rezoning. The concept plan that you see on the screen right now it's strictly concept. It's not a full design.
Okay. I'm against the zoning, and I'm a little concerned that two of the commissioners have left or gone now, and how valid this discussion would be with them not being a part of that discussion. I think it's important. I live in that neighborhood, and I think it's important to all of us that live out there. This will have a big impact on us. So I would be against the zoning, especially for a residential subdivision that close to the landfill. I guess I disagree with Engineer Morrow. I think this and the last subdivision we talked about would be the closest large subdivisions to the landfill. And I think there's some real impact there. So I guess I'm on record to be against the zoning, and would like to further discuss the project, and would also like to have all the commissioners in attendance so we get a good, strong opinion before it goes on to the Common Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hey, John.
I wasn't going to talk tonight. Name's John Pintek, 10233 West Ryan Road. We got the farm a lot of the land there. We've been there since the 40s. I think at the last planning commission meeting, somebody said that the zoning was ancient. Well, our land is zoned ag. That land abutted up to our land, it's zoned ag. Sisters across the street is zoned ag. Anybody drives through the southwestern quadrant of the city, it's all ag land. And I want to know what you guys are going to do to protect ag land. We just heard about this 122nd Street subdivision plan. You developed 76 in Oakwood. There's a bear development where Strellis was going. There's 120 acres gone. I don't know if your comprehensive master plan protects any of it, but I think you should look at it, please. And let me know.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Mr. Rivera.
Marcelino Rivera, 5536 West Allwood Drive. Yeah, I want to go on the record of saying I do not support this and wish and hope that you guys will vote to not recommend it and move it forward to the Common Council, because once again, we're talking about wetlands, and just like the previous public hearing that we had, you just didn't listen to what the citizens had to say. You didn't listen to what planning had written down as far as their recommendations. And I hope that we're not going to see a repeat of what we just had happen earlier. There are valid concerns, and you continually keep putting the cart before the horse. Now, someone said earlier that we're thinking only about ourselves, and I don't think that's true at all. I think that many of you up there are thinking about the developers. And Alderwoman Hanneman, you said that previously, that you have said that before, that you were worried about working with developers in the future. So here we are in the future, and the same developer, Bear Development, and where there is a TIF, and Bear Development bought a piece of property, okay? They bought a piece of property and sold it. They made $2 million off of that. And you know what then? Then they got it zoned in a TIF district. So get this.
Could you please speak to this development?
Yeah, I'm talking about Bear Development.
No, speak to the development, not the
Okay.
developer. It's about
All right,
rezoning.
well, it's about the developer. Okay, let me talk about the developer. We keep
Mr.
going
Rivera.
out of our way.
Mr. Rivera, I've asked you politely. Please speak to the development, not the developer. This is about a rezoning.
Okay, the development, okay, is brought forth by someone.
Nice try. Doesn't work.
All right, well, this development
Do you want this
is another.
residential or not?
Let me finish, all right? You shouldn't be interrupting me.
I should be interrupting you. I'm required to control the meeting and the time.
Okay, well, you're not following your own orders of procedure, actually.
I am.
That are by I can look it up right here and show you that you're
Please
not.
address the development.
Because the developer is
Please
supposed
address
to
the
make the
development.
presentation. The
staff makes the
applicant is
development.
supposed to make
Please
the,
address the development.
you're not following your procedures, is what I'm telling you.
Please address the development.
You're not following your,
Okay, I'm not. So please address the development.
just so that's on the record, this development is another one that disregards citizens that live in the area. You put the cart before the horse. You don't get approvals that are needed. You don't consider the wetlands. You don't consider the runoff of the surface and the rainwater and all of these things. And it's just on the spot. You just keep giving whatever to these developments that aren't bringing any value. You yourself just said they don't bring any value. What value is this bringing? This is residential, right? What value is this really bringing? And it's taking away parkland, land, and you can say that this zoning is obsolete all you want, but the reality is that just because you have a UDO that you guys, some of you play part in developing and manipulating, that you can say that you have to have a certain buffer for the wetlands and disregard everything else. You know, there's an ecosystem. There's a cause and effect to everything we do. And you guys only affect. You don't think about the impact or the cause or what you're doing to cause that effect. To these people, look it, we're here at 9:10 to talk about this. That's how important it is to us. And I guarantee you that some of you, like Glenn Morrow, you're gonna sit here and try to, oh, I looked at this and this was good. And just like Leon, Commissioner Leon, saying that he was okay with something.
Mr. Rivera?
Yeah.
You'll restrict your comments to the development.
Okay.
If you attack personally, I'm going to ask you to have a seat.
I'm not attacking personally. I'm
are.
stating facts about
My opinion
what-
that you're attacking personally.
that what has been said
Address
and
the development, please.
how concerns are being brushed off, not considered, and disregarded. You have a colleague right here. You have a whole plan. You have a team of developers that for the city, like when you're in favor of a development, you will
Do you
move
have
forward
a
with
comment
it.
on the development?
But you disregard.
Do you have a comment on the development?
You disregard what they're saying.
Mr.
The
Rivera,
comment of the
please have a
development
seat.
is that it should not be approved.
I'm going to ask you one more time. Either address the development or have a seat.
I'm talking about the development. The poor development, it does not take into consideration wetlands, not take into consideration the people that you are sworn and that you have said repeatedly you consider and have to consider. The 36,000 people of Franklin, which is about to grow now significantly, and you don't care about their safety being around a dump, a slaughterhouse, whatever else, or even the impact of the current residents that live there and the impact that it has to the quality of life, that we celebrate in our motto. You guys all need to think about this stuff seriously, because I'm going to be sitting next to you guys, some of you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Again, this is on a rezoning. Okay? Nothing to do with the layout or anything like that. It should be, Mrs. Zolke, please. No. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Chris Zaff. I live in 3926 West Cypress, not exactly in this neighborhood, but I moved to Franklin recently, and I'm really concerned about it. It's like, I thought I was moving for parkland. And it's like, all of a sudden, all this parkland is being encroached upon, and, you know, things are happening to change designations of wetlands, green space. I thought I was moving here for it. And I totally agree with Debbie's comments. I want to go on record for agreeing with those comments very much. And that's all I got, and I hope we can protect some green space and wetlands, et cetera. Climate change is going to get worse. We need more land. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Brandon Smaysky, 10830 West Oakwood Road, Franklin. I'm against the rezoning pretty much for what they said. I moved out here too for the country style, the open spaces. Everything's being rezoned or redeveloped, and there's plenty of land closer into town that they could probably buy on 36, anywhere else. I mean, I guess that's off subject, whatever. But there's no reason to rezone farmland in that area right now because there's plenty of other land, basically.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else? With that, I will close the public hearing. All right, questions from the commission, and the applicant is here. Commissioner, or Alderman, sorry.
I would like to make a few points and make some responses in terms of, especially not listening to the concerns of people. I disagree with that, but we also have to concern ourselves with the rights of the property owner. Yes, I hear that people want to conserve agricultural land, but my understanding is that this owner has been trying to sell this as agricultural land for the past 2 years, and there has not been offers. So this person has the opportunity to sell and hopefully make their retirement. And I would think that's a reasonable thing to do. It is not incumbent upon that particular property owner to maintain it as natural space and parkland for the rest of the city. That being said, I am the council representative to the Parks Commission. And 9 months of this year, we worked on the Parkland acquisition plan to spend down the park impact fees that we've been collecting from new development. New development goes to pay for these new parks, as the mayor alluded to earlier. This particular property that is up for rezone now was not part of the conversation of interest for a park. There are several other parcels that have been discussed among the Parks Commission, and the ultimate recommendation was to purchase up to 60 acres in the southwest corner. I think that topic was on several agendas. It was on Parks Commission agenda almost every month. It was before the Plan Commission a couple of times. It was before the Common Council a couple of times before it was ultimately approved. So I think it's fair to say that the city has a plan to preserve parkland space in that area. Quite possibly even that 40 acres that abuts the savanna. I would suggest, and I don't know that the applicant would commit yet, but should the city be interested in the 40 acres below to preserve as parkland, that the applicant would give us access through that parcel and also be able to bring in the utilities, the water and electrical, down into the park to help us develop and ultimately save us money in developing that parkland. So I'll open up to others.
Commissioner Haley.
In the interest of time, I'm not going to reiterate the comments I made at the last meeting. I still stand by them. I think this is premature at best. I'm not against the development. They've reduced it by a third. It's inconsistent with our plans, and this is the city's responsibility. If the plan is wrong, amend the plan. Live by a plan. Failure to plan is a plan for failure, right? So, put this on hold, go back, revisit the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, revisit the comprehensive plan, and decide, meet with the people, and if it needs changing, then change it. Then all of this issue goes away. But the concern I have is this is premature, and what it does is precludes a future park in the area. We might be able to get access, we might get something, but we don't even know that we can buy it. It precludes the extension of the trail that the city engineer spoke of, because the intent is to bring it to the Root River here, and you just cut off the only corridor that's gonna pass besides the street. So that's why you do a plan, is so that when proposals come in front of you, you can look at them and evaluate them according to the plan and say, that makes sense. If the vision of Franklin has changed, then go through the formal process to change it. This is just a shortcut. This is just doing an end around on our plans. Our UDO says the intent of the A2 zoning district is to prevent the premature conversion of agricultural land to scattered urban and suburban uses such as residential, commercial, and industrial uses. It precludes that. I'm not saying this is the right or wrong. We originally were shown something 3 times larger. And now they come back and there's a single parcel with streets connecting. We know they're coming back for the next 2 or 3 phases and an additional development to the north. That's pretty obvious. If that's appropriate, then go through the process. It's the council's responsibility. It's planning staff, the plan commission. There's a formal process. You have public hearings. You bring the people in and say, this is what we think now. 20 years ago, they were foolish. They never understood this or that. But you change the plan, and then you wouldn't need to be changing the zoning. We wouldn't be even going through this exercise. If we're really convinced that this is the highest and best use for that parcel and the other surrounding ones, then go with it. But modify the plan. As it stands on its own, these are the same comments I made in the last one. All you got to do is look at the exhibits. They're cutting right through 2 pieces of environmental corridor, wetland impacts. The certified survey map here even shows it as an approximate stream location per City of Franklin mapping. If it's a navigable stream, you got DNR, you got Corps of Engineers issues. Answer these questions first. That development can't happen unless you can get DNR permission to cut through 2 wetlands. And it's also contrary to Franklin's codes about preservation, the buffers. You know, the DNR only controls the wet part. We got the buffers around it, and we can waive those, but DNR and Corps have the final word. So why would you go ahead and at this point in time, rezone it, not knowing what you're gonna do with the rest, not knowing does it really fit with the plan? That's the mistake that we're making here. This is the Plan Commission. This is planning staff. We're looking at the future of Franklin, and we need to be more deliberate than just saying, oh, a developer came in and this is what he'd like to do and it might bring us some tax base. What is in the long-term best interest? Fix the plan, not the problem. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. City Engineer.
First of all, I'd like to address the comment about not listening to citizens. As I did earlier tonight, I did last meeting. I tried to write down absolutely everything that I heard and address them one by one as we went through that. I can tell you they're not always listened to, and I'm always appreciated, and I appreciate that. But I do want to say that we do take all of your comments seriously, and they're looked at. As far as the comment about tonight about protecting ag land, no one's forcing this individual to sell their land to make a subdivision. As Alderwoman mentioned, this is obviously they're doing this of their own free will. We don't restrict people from doing that. If you have ag land out there, that by all means, something you're welcome to encourage. This is Milwaukee County. I think it's probably unrealistic to expect that we're going to continue to stay complete ag land forever and ever. But this individual did find a willing buyer and wants to sell it for this price, and we offer that ability. As far as many of the comments that I made last meeting, apparently those were heard because I didn't hear those again tonight, as far as proximity to water and sewer and those kinds of things. Speaking of cart before the horse, this is not a site plan development. So there are obviously DNR, Corps of Engineers issues that have to be worked through. The city has our own things for protection of wetlands, the National Resource Special Protection issues, and we have a whole committee that looks on those. So this is a concept showing how it possibly could get laid out, but there are a lot of issues that have to be done between here and the finish line. We're not at that stage yet. This is just a rezoning issue. As far as the trail issue, I can tell you that obviously this doesn't show that, but there are right-of-ways, and I've talked to the developer about making sure that we allow a trail to go through there. So I would think it's inappropriate to say that this doesn't address the trail. We would make sure that trail would be addressed as part of a site plan development. Parkland encroachment, this is not a parkland. It has been called out on some previous plans, as many plans have, but I can also show you plans before I got here that show this has always been a subdivision. So I guess it depends on which plan you look at. There are a mixed match of several plans. Those plans anticipating this area was a subdivision. That's what the city and MMSD is spending a lot of money on for the Ryan Creek Interceptor, anticipating all the master plans that show that that would be sized appropriately for that. So that's, I guess when I look at previous plans, agreed, there are a mismatch of previous plans, and city should step up maybe and spend a lot of time, maybe the next 2 years, probably even longer is what it would take to put everything else on hold to completely go through and redo all the plans. But there are a lot of, I'm going to call them outdated plans, but there are plans that should be upgraded. But that doesn't negate the fact that you have to look at what's on the table in front of you and make appropriate plans considering all those previous plans, all of them, not just one plan in particular. So I didn't hear anything new other than those that I just mentioned tonight. Apparently all the ones that I mentioned last meeting. I would say I am somewhat concerned the fact that I don't think I heard all of the concerns from last meeting that people had. I thought they were either addressed or I didn't understand why there were no votes. So I think that we addressed all the issues. So the wetlands and those, proximity to utilities and so forth. Seems like that we addressed everything that would allow this to be continue on and proceed. And again, as I mentioned in the last project, when it gets to this stage, admittedly, a lot of my concerns have been addressed through the process, and I try to make sure that those are addressed as we go through here. This is probably the 6th or 12th iteration probably that we've seen as far as site design. So that's enough.
Frankly, the purpose of the Plan Commission, after a comp plan is done and after a zoning ordinance is written, is to manage changes to those documents. That's what our job is, right? And we have yet to do the comp plan or the corp plan. Corp plan is not really our part, but anyway. So right now, we're working through the procedure to do that properly. The first thing is to get your zoning ordinance in place. And the zoning ordinance was in worse shape than the comp plan. And we're working through that. There's a couple of years worth of work for the comp plan. So the issue before us is this an appropriate rezone? Does it fit with the goals and the intent that this commission believes the direction will go for this area? Is there a motion on this matter?
I move to adopt I'll move to adopt a resolution recommending the adoption of an ordinance to amend the City of Franklin 2025 Comprehensive Master Plan to change the City of Franklin 2025 Future Land Use Map for property bearing tax key number 892-9999002 generally located on the east side of South 112th Street, east of the Ryan Meadows subdivision, and west of the Franklin Savannah Natural Area, from recreational use and areas of natural resource features to a residential use pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 66.1001, parents 4, parent B. And can we do them together?
No.
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 Okay.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by City Engineer Morrow. Might as well go ahead.
Commissioner Burkhart? Commissioner Haley?
No.
Engineer Morrow? Alder Hanneman?
Motion is 2-2. Plan Commission rules require that there be a four affirmative vote to any procedural action by the commission, so therefore the motion fails. And the next motion is not necessary. So with that, we move on to Mr. City Engineer, or Mr. City Attorney.
Just for a bit more detail on Wisconsin statutes on an amendment to a comprehensive plan require, if it's going to go to the Common Council for approval, that it be recommended by the Plan Commission by way of resolution upon a vote of a majority of all the members of the commission. So required by the Wisconsin statute, insufficient vote was not obtained for adoption of the resolution. So there is no motion to recommend. So even if the Plan Commission voted on the rezoning ordinance, the property cannot be rezoned if it's not consistent with the master plan. And so there is not a need to vote on that rezoning part of the applications, because the council would not be able to act on it anyway, because the council would need a recommendation to amend the comprehensive master plan.
So the net is nothing's going to.
It's advertised.
There is a public hearing scheduled on the comprehensive master plan, because I'm assuming the notice had to go out already, but I dare say the agenda include just a notice that there, a small N period B period near the top of, as a notice on the agenda that the matter was previously noticed but is not proceeding. And council members should be advised, but I don't see why it would go on a common council meeting agenda.
No.
Okay. What is the agenda item? It's D.
C2.
E2.
C2.
Which is change to the.
Table.
Oh, here we go. We're going to change something again.
Yep.
Change to the permitted use table. To allow special uses in non-residential zoning districts. Mr. Eddie, please.
City of Franklin Plan Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 9, 2021 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter as possible in the Common Council Chambers at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin 53132, to take public comments regarding a proposal to amend the City of Franklin Unified Development Ordinance, specifically Table 15-3.0603, regarding standard industrial classification title numbers 1711, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, 1721, painting and paper hanging, 1731, electrical work, 1741, masonry, stone setting, and other stone work, 1742, plastering, drywall, acoustical, and insulation work, 1743, terrazzo tile, marble and mosaic work, 1751, carpentry work, 1752, floor laying and other floor work not elsewhere classified, and then 1761, roofing, siding, and sheet metal work, to change such uses from a special use to a permitted use in the B2 General Business District, B5 Highway Business District, and M1 Limited Industrial District. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the requirements of Section 62.23, Paragraph 72 of the Wisconsin statutes and Division 15-9.0200 of the City of Franklin Unified Development Ordinance. The application and all supporting materials are available for review and may be obtained from the city clerk by way of request to the Department of City Development at Franklin City Hall, 9229 West Loomis Road, Franklin, Wisconsin 53132 during normal business hours. A copy of the proposed Unified Development Ordinance text amendment ordinance in draft form is available and open for inspection by the public in the office of the city clerk at Franklin City Hall. Same address during normal business hours. The public is invited to attend the public hearing and provide input.
Okay. Why?
So this is this amendment is proposed by city development staff to streamline the permitting process for special trade contractors. This originated when an electrical contractor who has a special use permit sold the business or sold the property to a plumbing contractor. So that plumbing contractor needed to go through all the special use permitting process for a building that was a warehouse in the manufacturing zoning district. So what we are proposing is to change from a special use to permitted to avoid to go through all that process. If you have concerns about nuisance to residential properties, the UDO requires landscape buffer between residential and business zoning district. And this amendment is not including outdoor storage. So if the special trade contractor is only for the office, the retail, and indoor operation, is permitted. If they have outdoor storage for materials, like mulch or for landscaping or lumber for carpenters, they will need to go through the special use.
Okay, we have a properly noticed public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing no one rise, I'll close the public hearing on this matter. And all I'll mention to the Plan Commission is, if we're consistent, I expect this to be a 2-2 vote. Okay, Mr. City Engineer.
We'd actually open it up even more so that those other uses wouldn't have to come back. They'd automatically be considered.
So, sorry, could you repeat that question?
You mentioned there at the end that if someone, say, wanted to store lumber, they have to come back and ask for special permission. Did I?
If they have outdoor storage, yeah.
Outside storage.
Outdoor storage. This prohibits outdoor storage.
Requiring special use for outdoor storage is consistent with other provisions currently in the UDO. So that's all we're doing, is we're just making that part consistent. But the reason for this is because the difference between one contractor and another contractor on a site is nil. And the only reason why they had to do that was because once they had a special use and because they weren't the same contractor, they had to go back through the same process, which is absurd.
And that's a similar issue that we've been having with the SIC code. Close enough, they shouldn't have to.
Okay. Commissioner Haley.
No comment. It makes sense.
Commissioner Hanneman.
Okay, I move to recommend approval of an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance text at Table 15-3.0603, Standard Industrial Classification titled numbers 1711, Plumbing and Heating and Air Conditioning, 1721, Painting and Paper Hanging, 1731, Electrical Work, 1741, Masonry, stone setting, and other stonework, 1742. Plastering, drywall, acoustical, and insulation work, 1743. Terrazzo, tile, marble, and mosaic work, 1751. Carpentry work, 1752. Floor laying and other floor work not elsewhere classified, and 1761. Roofing, siding, and sheet metal work. To change such uses from a special use to a permitted use in the B2 General Business District, B5 Highway Business District, and M1 Limited Industrial District.
Or second?
Second.
Okay. Go ahead.
Commissioner Burkhardt? Commissioner Haley?
Aye.
Engineer Morrow?
Aye.
Alder Hanneman?
Aye.
Motion carries, 4 ayes, no noes, 3 absent, 2 absent, and no abstentions. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recording stop.